My name is Laura Gardner, and I am a research assistant at the Jean Monnet Network and Transatlantic Trade Politics. This is part of a series of interviews by the network called the Transatlantic Trade Videos. We're here today with Scott Hamilton, who is a PhD candidate from the Political Science Department at the University of Antwerp in Belgium. Welcome, Scott, thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. Let's get started with our first question. In the context of trade, what are civil society organisations and how are they connected to issues of politicisation?
Civil society organizations are a type of interest group. So interest groups are all political actors, all organizations that are lobbying for policy change but not running for office. And then civil society organizations, at least in the way that I use the concept, are a type of interest group, so a subgroup. And they include organizations lobbying for public goods, whereas interest groups offer their members selective incentives, so incentives that only accrue to the members of the group. Civil society organizations offer purposive and solidary incentives. So purposive incentives are, the incentive is to work towards an outcome. That is an incentive in itself, meaningfully. And the solidary incentive is they offer their members a chance to struggle for something.
In your recent article, you mentioned the concept of bandwagoning. Can you tell us what is bandwagoning and how has it played a role in the politicisation of trade agreement negotiation?
Yes, bandwagoning is, but in the introduction to the special issue that article called Dropping Off the Bandwagon is part of, bandwagoning is listed as one of 4 possible responses to contestation. So when somebody's contesting a trade agreement negotiation, or when one actor, government, an interest group, a civil society organization, when any political actor is contesting any policy, in this case trade agreement negotiations, the other actors either they might agree with it or disagree with it, so they can align with the contestation or they can oppose the contestation. Bandwagoning is aligned with the contestation. And then also, just to differentiate between different responses, they might be aligned with the contestation, so support the argument against the policy without doing anything, in which case they would be free riding, or what you might call free riding. They would be hoping to get the benefits. They would be hoping that other actors contest the policy so they get the thing they want, but without having to engage themselves in the discussion, either for fear of reputational consequences or because it's too expensive or because, for a number of reasons. So that's free riding. That's aligned with contestation without doing anything. And then bandwagoning is when the groups are active, they're contesting as well, and they're aligned with the contestation that they've seen elsewhere. So that's bandwagoning. I see somebody else contesting a policy, and I decide that I am also going to actively contest the policy. That's bandwagoning.
How is an attention cascade related to bandwagoning?
So an attention cascade is what happens when some organizations are contesting an issue, that either they succeed in raising the salience of an issue, so they get some feedback from the general public, from the media. In an attention cascade, what happens is organizations perceive that this issue salience has gone up and that it presents an opportunity for them to appeal to their supporters. So, in an attention cascade, often it's keystone actors. So I would see maybe one of the big name CSOs, or I would see it on a media organization that's important. If I was a civil society organization, I might see one of these keystone actors contesting an issue and either believe that that issue must be important or just take that as a signal to mean that this is probably an issue that is salient, this is probably an issue that is relevant, and one that I need to be active on in order to keep my current supporters or to appeal to new supporters. And the cascade effect, and this is what's hypothesized in the literature, and this is what I'm building upon, the cascade effect is that it grows kind of like a snowball. That one organization is active, another organization sees that organization contesting something, decides to contest it as well. Now there are two. And then perhaps a third organization sees those two organizations actively contesting an issue. They decide to become active on it too. And then, yeah, the whole thing kind of snowballs like that and gathers more and more people. So it's like a cascade effect. It's like an avalanche where because this keystone actor started contesting an issue, that perceived salience kind of spreads until many actors are involved in contesting an issue that seems salient. And then again, in this case, we're talking about trade agreement negotiations, but attention cascades aren't limited to trade agreements by any means.
Your research identifies that attention cascades are characterized by the three complementary processes of defection, division, and domestication. What are these processes and why are they important?
All right, let's go through them in order. Defection means leaving, right? And so this is what I've called dropping off the bandwagon in the paper. The assumption in an attention cascade is that organizations see other organizations activating and they hop onto the bandwagon and it creates this kind of snowball effect with more and more groups piling on. And then what I assume, or what I argue, is that the reason why they got on the bandwagon in the first place was to somehow maintain their organization, to get money, to get information, to get attention. And so if they're not getting these things by bandwagoning, then they should drop off the bandwagon. That's defection. Division, the second hypothesis, is that if they are getting organizational maintenance, if there are a number of groups that are actually succeeding by hopping on the bandwagon, and by succeeding I mean getting attention, getting money, or getting political information that they can use in order to achieve their policy objectives, if they're succeeding and a lot of other groups are succeeding, then they need to differentiate themselves amongst each other. So there's this, it's called strategic diversification. Basically, if they want to seem more true, more committed, more deserving than other groups. And so one way that they can signal this to potential supporters is by being more radical, by taking a slightly more radical stance, maybe by their repertoire of actions, the things they do, instead of just writing angry letters, they'll go onto the street and protest. Or even worse, maybe they start breaking things, anyways, they radicalize in order to differentiate themselves from other groups, in order to show that they're more committed to the same outcome. So that's what I called division. And then the last one, domestication. It refers to domestication. It's like when you have a dog. When you have a dog and you bring it home, you train it and it acts differently than it would outside your house. In European policy, when European policies or European issues come into member states, they get domesticated in the sense that they need to adapt to the domestic situation within the member state. And so this is a comment on the level of organizational maintenance which is necessary in order to keep contesting an issue within a different institutional context. That's complicated. Basically, what the domestication hypothesis suggests is that in states where civil society organizations have the possibility of offering both purposive and solidary incentives, that they can contribute meaningfully to the formation of public policy and offer the opportunity of struggling, then they will need less resources in order to keep functioning, because the resources that they get are more immediately fungible. That you can contribute some, that I as a civil society organization, I can test an issue, and the feedback that I get from my supporters is immediately transmitted to policymakers who are willing to listen to me. That if you, Laura, are actually upset about a certain trade issue and you communicate that through a civil society organization, then because I'm institutionally supported, I can convert that into meaningful policy action more easily in an open political system than in a closed one. So the domestication hypothesis is kind of like a constraint on the organizational maintenance hypothesis. That was to do with defection. So first, I think that organizational maintenance will at least be associated with how long or how willing civil society organizations are to stay on the bandwagon. That I expect that they're going to split. That's the second part, division. But I expect this to be also reflecting the fact that there are different political opportunity structures across Europe that mean that some organizations actually can stay on at lower levels, stay on the bandwagon at lower levels of organizational maintenance than others.
What is the relationship between contestation and organizational maintenance, and how does organizational maintenance relate to the radicalization of the position of civil society organizations?
The relationship that I uncover is a positive association between organizational maintenance and ongoing contestation. So what that means is that as organizational maintenance increases, ongoing contestation, so the likelihood of staying on the bandwagon, increases. And in terms of radicalization, it's similar. Basically, what the radicalization hypothesis explains is a small group of outliers who dropped off the bandwagon even though, or seemed like they dropped off the bandwagon even though they achieved a high level of organizational maintenance. I had this group, these were the ones that didn't get any organizational maintenance and had dropped off. Okay, that's what was expected. This is the group that got a lot of attention, got a lot of resources. They stayed on. That was what was expected. There are two groups of outliers. One is down here, and that's what the radicalization hypothesis is about. It says that these groups are no longer in the same coalition, but they got a lot of organizational maintenance. What happens to them? And then what I found is that they had actually joined another slightly more radical coalition. So there was a positive association between organizational maintenance and radicalization, in the sense that these groups that were over here, the more that they were, the more organizational maintenance they had, the more likely they were to have gone off to another more radical organization. And it also applied to, so if there was the low, low, high, high category, that in this high organizational maintenance and ongoing contestation category, that this also included a lot of groups who were taking more radical positions.
Based on your findings, is there any significant connection between high levels of organizational maintenance and the expression of more radical ideas?
I wouldn't go that far. I would say, I wouldn't go so far as to say that getting attention, and getting political information, and maybe getting money from supporters necessarily makes organizations more radical. I couldn't say that based on my findings. What I could say is that it seems like states, civil society organizations that operate in states with closed political opportunity structures can only survive by taking more radical positions. And this is back to the purposive and solidary incentives that they offer, because they can't offer meaningful participation in the formation of public policy. They can only offer struggle. They can only offer the experience of struggle, the experience of participating in a struggle against a government who is unwilling to listen to them. They're doing something which is very inefficient, right? So their survival strategy is inefficient by default because of the political opportunity structure that they're operating within. And this isn't as true for civil society organizations operating in member states with open political opportunity structures. So, I guess the implication, the thing that's most interesting that comes out of this is not that, ooh, money and attention and resources leads to radicalization. It's about the survival strategies that are possible for different organizations operating in different member states with different political opportunity structures. And so if I had one conclusion that I wanted to take away from this, then yeah, okay, it would be that this hypothesis about organizational maintenance leading to ongoing contestation, yes, that there is this association, but also, and I think most importantly, that there is this connection between opportunity structure and the capacity of organizations to keep contesting issues.
So that ends our interview for today, and thank you once again, Scott, for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.